Now then, how are you doing? I hope you're well. I want to talk to you about hills, one of my favourite subjects. Specifically, I want to talk to you about the many different visual hints we can use to explain their three-dimensional properties. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to start by painting a hill, or a couple of hills even. Well, there's nothing extraordinary about that. I'm painting it using a light green mixed from cadmium yellow and Prussian blue. The single flat colour tells us absolutely nothing about its three-dimensional shape. In fact, flat would describe it rather well, I think. So, what can we do to improve it? Well, for starters, adding some more hills might help. As they stand, the hills exist very much in isolation. There's nothing to help place them into any sort of context. So I'm adding a few background hills using Prussian blue. Already that's helped to push the green hills forward a little more. We're starting to get some idea of scale perhaps, but those green hills still look flat. There are many visual hints we can use to explain the three-dimensional properties of hills. How about adding some trees, for instance? Not necessarily individual trees, but groups of trees, copses, woodland, even a whole forest or two. The point is, while trees help to punctuate a landscape, they can also help to reinforce the contours of the land beneath them. From a distance, woods and forests become single dark shapes, but curving their base helps to explain the lie of the land. I hope you'll agree with me that they make quite a difference. Suddenly, those hills don't seem quite so flat. There are a few other additional features we might use to help explain the three-dimensional properties of hills. Here I've mixed up a grey from French ultramarine and burnt umber, and I'm going to use it to paint in some field boundaries. Such boundaries can take many forms. Depending upon whereabouts you live in the country, these might consist of hedges, or if you live in the north of England like I do, they're more likely to be dry stone walls. Either way, they can help to reinforce and enhance the suggestion of contours within a scene. It's important, however, to try and avoid too much repetition. By their very nature, fields tend to have square or geometric shapes, so you should endeavour to vary them a little, alternate their shapes and sizes, and throw in a few surprises along the way. Walls curve as they follow the contours of the ground, but they also obey the laws of linear perspective. As they get further away from us, they should appear to get smaller and more tightly packed together. They will also become less visible. Just to recap, this is where we started and this is how it's looking now. It's starting to look like a real landscape. But before I go any further, although the trees are helping to explain the contours of the land, they are still looking a little flat themselves. To remedy this, I've mixed up a slightly darker green to try and fill them out a bit. A copse of trees is a three-dimensional object, so it should have a top and sides. Simply adding a darker tone to it is enough to turn it from a flat two-dimensional shape into a three-dimensional one. The important thing here, of course, is to curve the brush marks to give them the correct shape and to break them up enough to suggest lots of trees and prevent them from looking too solid. Green fields don't all look the same. In some, the grass will be longer or of a different variety. This is farmland, so some fields will be full of crops, wheat or barley, or used for grazing. Untamed meadows full of wild flowers will stand out too. To suggest this and to bring a bit of variety to the scene, I'm applying a light glaze of cadmium yellow to one or two selected fields. As always, the challenge is to keep it looking random. An alternative to the cadmium yellow glaze is burnt umber. Not only will that help to add a raw surface to some of the fields, but it is also a good complementary colour to the abundance of greens. As with the yellow, it's important to try and maintain a random distribution of colours and not allow them to fall into any sort of pattern. On the subject of agriculture, ploughed fields are another source of visual support for the perceived three-dimensional shape of the ground. The lines of the furrows will hug the contours of the land like gradient lines on a map. Providing you don't overdo it, this can be a very effective little touch. The only thing is, it's important to ensure that such visual hints don't contradict each other or send out the wrong message. Think carefully about how the land might curve before applying the lines. Farm tracks and roads are also useful compositional elements. Not only do they follow and help to explain the contours of the land, but they also add visual interest. Tracks can help to draw the viewer's eye into a scene. If they disappear behind some trees and reappear again, then that can help to feed the viewer's curiosity and keep them interested. Finally, there's just one last trick we could use to help enhance the illusion of the three-dimensional landscape. Shadows. Clouds cast shadows across the land, which can be very convenient for the artist. They are a gift to landscape painters, since they can be manipulated and used in whichever way creates the most impact. In short, they can be engineered to fall wherever we want them to. I'm using a blue-grey colour mixed from French ultramarine and burnt umber, and I'm softening them off with a damp brush. Depending upon the paper you're using, there may be a cost to this. we have to take care not to apply too much pressure when applying the shadows. Otherwise, there's a danger of lifting up what's been painted previously. There is also a high probability that some of the earlier details may be lost. Well, this may not necessarily be a problem, since it can control some of that detail, softening it off and making it less prominent. But my final stage of this demonstration will be to repaint in some of the earlier details and apply some darker tones to the walls nearest to us and along the base of some of the trees. Well, I hope you enjoyed that and found the demonstration helpful. Trees, walls or hedges, ploughed fields, tracks and roads, and cloud shadows are all elements we can use to help visually explain the three-dimensional properties of the landscape. Of course, I've thrown all the tricks at it at once for the sake of the demonstration. It could be that you may only need to use one or two of them at any time though, to get the three-dimensional effect that you're after. Until next time, take care.